The invisible exchange, trading freedom for convenience. I never truly understood how much my freedom mattered until it slipped away. Not the kind of freedom you see on the news. I'm talking about the quiet kind, the simple daily choices that quietly shape who you are. Deciding when to wake up, picking what you want to eat, choosing your clothes without checking a calendar or a staff schedule. Before I moved into the nursing home, I had my little routines. I'd wake up when the sunlight peeked through my curtains, not when someone knocked on my door. I made my coffee just the way I liked it. 2 scoops, bold, no sugar. I'd settle into my favorite chair, the one with the worn armrest from years of leaning in the same way, and read at my own pace. No clock watching, no noise, just my day, my way. But the moment I moved in, all of that quietly faded. It didn't feel like a big loss at first. My family said it was a nice place, that I'd be cared for, that everything would be easier. And it was, maybe too easy. Meals came on schedule, my medications were sorted for me, friendly people checked in, life got smoothed out. But in that process, something essential quietly slipped away. That first week, I reached for a book I always kept on my nightstand and realized it wasn't there. Not just the book. The nightstand was gone, the lamp was different. Even the feel of the carpet under my feet had changed. It hit me. This wasn't my room. It wasn't my home. It was a space made for someone like me, but it hadn't been made by me. One morning I tried to go outside for a walk like I used to do. Just let us know first, someone said. We need to make sure someone's available to go with you. I understood. They were trying to keep me safe. But I wasn't asking to hike a mountain. I just wanted to feel the sun on my face, breathe fresh air, maybe hear the birds fuss over the squirrels again. And so began the quiet reshaping of my life. Breakfast at 7:30, whether I was hungry or not. Activities at 10, lights out at 9. Miss a meal, good luck finding anything outside of snack time. Want to wear something different than what's laid out? Better speak fast. The aide has a full list of other residents to help. At first, I thought I'd push back. I've always had a bit of fight in me, but it wears you down, this system that keeps moving whether you speak up or not. Eventually, you stop asking, you stop pushing, you just adjust. And that's the hardest part. Not the loss of control, but how quickly you get used to living without it. You don't notice it at first. You tell yourself it's temporary, that you're just settling in, but then a month goes by, then 3. And you suddenly can't remember the last time you made a decision that felt like yours. The days blur, the colors dull. You feel like a shadow of who you used to be, drifting through someone else's design. Let me be clear, this isn't about blaming anyone. The staff are kind, they mean well, but no one told me that being cared for would mean handing over the keys to my own life, that I'd become a passenger, buckled in, safe, and slowly fading. If you're reading this and still living in your own home, still making your own toast, taking your own walk, staying up late to watch your favorite show, let me tell you, that is gold. That is freedom. And it's more fragile than you realize. Because once you trade independence for ease, getting it back isn't just hard, it's nearly impossible. Out of sight, out of heart. The pain of being forgotten. When I first moved into the nursing home, my heart held on to hope. My daughter gave me a big hug and said, "We'll visit all the time, Dad. You won't even have time to miss us." I smiled, not because I fully believed her, but because I wanted to. I had to. And at first they did come. My daughter would visit once a week, sometimes bringing lunch or a few new photos of the grandkids. On weekends, my son and his family would stop by. We'd sit out in the garden, chat, laugh, catch up on their lives. For a while, it felt okay, like my old life had come with me, just in smaller pieces. But over time, as it always does, life started pulling them in other directions. My daughter began calling instead of visiting. "Work's been wild lately," she'd say, "but I'll swing by next week, I promise." My son's visits started to taper off too. College applications for his youngest, house repairs, a dozen things at once. Life in your 40s tends to fill up fast. I understood. I really did. But knowing why doesn't make the quiet any easier. The holidays were the hardest. Thanksgiving used to be noisy, joyful chaos. Kids running through the house, the smell of turkey and sweet potatoes, someone always forgetting the rolls. Now I sit in a room with paper decorations and a tray of cafeteria stuffing, surrounded by polite smiles and eyes that all seem to be waiting for someone who probably won't arrive. I remember one Christmas Eve, I sat beside a woman named Clara in the common area. She had on a red sweater and held a wrapped gift in her lap. "My son's coming tonight," she whispered. "He always comes on Christmas Eve." She waited until well after dark, long past when the staff started passing out cookies and cocoa. Then gently she opened the box herself. Inside was a framed photo of him, young, smiling, and far away. That was the night it really hit me. We weren't forgotten out of cruelty. We just slipped off the radar. When you're not part of someone's daily life anymore, it's easy to become a memory. You're not at the dinner table, not in the group texts, not part of the usual rhythm. You're safe, you're doing fine, and so it feels like love is still there. But the truth is, we need that love more than ever. Loneliness in a nursing home doesn't shout. It's quiet, polite. It's watching the door at 2 p.m. on a Saturday and pretending you weren't hoping to see someone walk through. It's scrolling through pictures on your phone and deciding not to make a call because you don't want to seem needy or desperate or sad. It's being surrounded by people and still feeling unseen. And once that feeling sets in, of being invisible, it becomes hard to believe anyone sees you at all. So let me speak clearly to anyone considering a nursing home or thinking about placing a loved one in one. This kind of loneliness is real, and it doesn't go away with bingo nights or warm, well-meaning staff. It's the quiet ache of knowing that the people who once built their lives around you now visit when they can, when life allows. That doesn't mean they don't love you, but love without presence of heart, starts to feel less like a relationship and more like a memory. So before you take this step, ask yourself honestly, can you handle being loved from afar? Can you live with the silence? Because in this place, silence doesn't just mean quiet. It means being reminded every single day that the world has moved on without you. Life without a why. Losing purpose in a perfectly managed life. Back at home, I used to wake up with a reason. Even if it was a simple day ahead, it still felt like mine. I'd get out of bed, stretch a little, brew my coffee just the way I liked it, and toss a handful of seed out for the birds by the window. I had a to-do list, maybe not on paper, but clear enough in my mind. Water the plants, sweep the porch, call an old buddy, maybe finally fix that leaky faucet I'd been avoiding. Nothing big, but those little things gave my day shape. They gave me shape. When I moved into the nursing home, that shape quietly faded away. At first, I told myself it was a good thing. You've earned this, I thought. Let someone else carry the load for once. Hot meals arrived like clockwork. My laundry came back neatly folded. The bed was made before I even had a chance to touch it. I didn't need to shop for groceries, wash dishes, or worry about mail. For a week or two, it felt like a break, a well-deserved vacation. But vacations are supposed to end. This one didn't. Soon I started noticing how quiet the hours became. Not the peaceful kind of quiet, more like an empty one. The kind that doesn't calm you, but eats away at the edges. I'd sit in my chair after breakfast and wonder, now what? The answer often came as a flyer slipped under my door. Arts and crafts at 10, group exercise at 11, movie night at 6. It was thoughtful. It was organized, but it didn't feel personal because you can't replace purpose with activities. They're not the same thing. Not long after I moved in, I met a man named George, 84, lean build, big gnarled hands that looked like they'd been carved out of oak. He'd worked as a carpenter for over 5 decades. Built my first treehouse at 12, he told me with a twinkle in his eye. Around the facility, he used to fix little things, door latches, wobbly chairs, curtain rods coming loose. That is, until someone from management asked him to stop. Liability, they said. After that, George changed. He grew quieter. The small leather pouch that used to carry his tools stayed tucked away in his dresser. His hands, always moving, now sat still in his lap like they'd forgotten what they were made for. One day over lunch, he looked at me and said, "Feels like the second I walked in here, I stopped being useful. That hit home. There's a hidden cost to being too well taken care of. It takes away your need to contribute. And when no one expects anything of you, you begin expecting less from yourself. Over time, you forget what it feels like to matter, not just to others, but to yourself. Purpose isn't always some big, noble cause. It can live in the smallest routines. Making your own coffee, folding your own shirts, remembering to water the ferns before the sun gets too strong. It's not about being busy, it's about staying connected to who you are. It's knowing why you're getting up in the morning beyond just having someone deliver your meds. Inside a nursing home, that why can get blurry. You start to drift. Days run together, conversations grow short, eye contact fades. The version of yourself that once had opinions, passions, little projects, that spark, starts to feel like a memory, and that's the real heartbreak. Not just losing the life you had, but losing the reason you had it. So if you're still living at home, still trimming your own hedges, still making your own burnt toast because you like it that way, don't take that for granted. Hold on to it. Fight for it. Because when you lose your sense of purpose, it's not just your schedule that changes. It's you. The slow fade. How comfort can weaken the body. Before I moved into the nursing home, I wasn't exactly sprinting around the neighborhood, but I could still do what mattered. I made my own meals. I walked out to the mailbox. I bent down to feed the cat. My body wasn't perfect, but it worked. And more importantly, I used it every single day. I thought what I was feeling was just part of getting older. But it turns out it wasn't age that made me weaker. It was comfort. When I first arrived, I was amazed at how easy life became. Meals delivered right to the dining room, laundry picked up and returned, folded neatly. There was always someone nearby if I needed help. You've earned this, they said. Relax. Let yourself be taken care of. So I did. I stopped standing at the stove to cook. Why bother? I stopped walking around the house. Everything I needed was right there. I even stopped doing my morning stretches, since I wasn't heading out much anyway. At first, it felt like a treat, like I had stepped into a life of luxury. Then I started noticing the little things. My legs felt stiffer. Getting out of bed took more effort than before. I found myself reaching for railings I never used. One morning, I bent down to tie my shoes and nearly toppled forward. My balance was off. My body was changing. But it wasn't because of time. It was because of stillness. The less I did, the less I could do. And it wasn't just me. I saw it in others too. People who arrived walking soon switched to walkers. Walkers became wheelchairs. Folks who once strolled to the dining room now had their meals brought to them. It wasn't always because of a new health problem. Sometimes it was just easier to let someone else take over. I remember Alice. She was 81 when she moved in, full of spark. Every morning she walked the loop around the building. Keeps my ticker going, she'd say with a grin. For a while she stuck with it, but then a rainy week came. That turned into two. Her walk slowed, then stopped. One afternoon, sitting beside me in the lounge, she whispered, "I don't know when it happened, but I feel like I aged 10 years in 3 months." That stuck with me, because when life becomes too easy, your body starts forgetting what it's for. Muscles shrink, joints tighten. That body you once relied on becomes hesitant, fragile. And once your strength fades, you lose more than just motion. You lose confidence. Fear creeps in. The armchair feels safer than the sidewalk. And when you stop trusting your body, it slowly stops showing up for you. No one warns you about this part. They say you'll be safer, that you'll be cared for, that you won't have to lift a finger. But what they don't tell you is not lifting a finger is exactly how your strength begins to fade. Slowly, quietly, and sometimes for good. If I had known, I would have moved more. I would have insisted on making my own bed, taking the stairs, doing anything to remind my body that it still had work to do. Because movement isn't just about exercise. It's about independence. It's about staying you. So if you can still stand without help, still open a jar, still reach that glass on the top shelf, celebrate that, use it, protect it. Because once it's gone, it doesn't return easily. And in a place where everything is built to make life effortless, it's easy to forget. Effort is what keeps you alive. The loss of privacy and dignity that disappears with it. It's a strange thing how dignity fades. Not in one big moment, but little by little, through the quiet erosion of boundaries you never imagined you'd have to defend. At home, I had space, and I don't just mean walls and square footage. I had personal space. I could close the door. I could sit in silence. I could get undressed without an audience, cry if I needed to, or sing in the shower just because the mood struck me. My life was mine, my body, my time, my choices. They were private. They were respected. That changed when I moved in. I still remember the first time someone came into my room without knocking. They meant well. They were doing their job. But they entered like the space belonged to them, not to me. And maybe in a way it didn't. The room was provided. The furniture picked out for me. Even the sheets felt temporary, like I was staying somewhere I didn't quite belong. I tried to make it feel like home. I hung family photos. I brought in my favorite blanket. But there's only so much you can do when someone else can walk in at any time. When your bathroom breaks might need assistance. When getting dressed becomes something you do with help. Now, there's no shame in needing help. I've helped people in my life. But needing help for everything all the time, that wears down the layers of privacy you didn't realize meant so much. And it's not just physical. It gets emotional. Imagine wanting to take a shower and being told you'll have to wait until someone's available. Or needing the restroom and pressing the call button, silently praying someone shows up fast enough. And when they don't, you're left feeling embarrassed. Not because you did something wrong, but because you're no longer in control of your own most basic needs. Even mealtimes remind you how little say you have. The menu's set, the choices are limited. If you don't like what's being served, well, maybe tomorrow. And then there's the matter of roommates. I was lucky. Mine was quiet, respectful, kept to himself. But I've heard the stories. Roommates who screamed all night, who forgot where they were, who never cleaned up. People paired not because they clicked, but because there was an empty bed. When you share your most vulnerable years with a stranger, your identity starts to feel like something you have to fight to keep. Dignity isn't just about pride, it's about personhood, about being spoken to like an adult, not a child, about being asked before someone touches your body, about being seen not as a case file or a bed number, but as you. There were days when I felt like a task on someone's checklist, just a name on a pill chart, a signature on a shift report. And every time that happened, I felt a little less like myself. I don't believe anyone meant harm. I think the system is stretched thin, too rushed, too routine. But good intentions don't erase the impact. So if you're thinking about moving into a nursing home or placing someone you love in one, ask this: are you ready to give up privacy in exchange for support? And if the answer is yes, ask one more. How will you hold on to your dignity, even in shared spaces and tightly scheduled payments? Because once you give up those parts of yourself, getting them back isn't just hard. Sometimes it's impossible. The trap. Why it's so hard to leave once you're in. When I first agreed to move into the nursing home, I told myself it was only temporary. Just for a little while, I said. Just until I get stronger. Just until things settle down a bit. I even left a few boxes unpacked in my garage, like I'd be back home by the end of summer. I asked my daughter not to change anything in the house. I thought I was being smart. I thought I had an exit plan. I didn't. No one really tells you how sticky this decision can be. On paper, it looks reversible. But once you step inside, the outside world starts to fade, and getting back to it becomes a whole lot harder than you'd think. At first, it's the little things. Your house sits empty. The pipes freeze. Weeds take over the yard. The mail piles up. Bills don't stop coming. Your kids, trying to be helpful, start taking over. They cancel subscriptions, sell the car, maybe clean out a room, or start talking about renting the place to help with costs. And believe me, the cost is no small thing. Nursing homes are expensive. Your savings drain faster than you imagine. Suddenly, the idea of moving back, paying for movers, hiring help, fixing up the house, it all feels like trying to climb a mountain with slippers on. Then there's your health. Remember what I said about losing strength, how quickly the body weakens when it stops being challenged. That decline happens faster than you expect. And by the time you notice, you're not asking, do I want to go home? You're asking, can I even manage it anymore? That was when the panic set in. One afternoon, I asked my daughter if she thought I could move back home. There was a long pause. Then she said gently, Dad, are you sure you can handle it on your own? She wasn't being cold. She was being honest. And the hardest part was, I didn't know the answer. I didn't feel steady on my feet. Simple things made me tired. My confidence had slipped away. After being taken care of for so long, I wasn't sure I still knew how to take care of myself. That fear, that quiet, creeping fear, is what keeps most people here. It's not the rules. It's not the money. It's the doubt. I met a woman named Evelyn, sharp as a tack. Beautiful voice, used to teach piano. She said, I thought I'd be here just a few months, long enough to figure things out. But now my apartment's gone. My savings are nearly dried up. And when I sit at the piano, my fingers don't move like they used to. I stayed too long. And now I don't know how to leave. That's the trap. It's not a cage. There's no lock on the door. But the longer you stay, the taller the walls become. Financial walls, physical walls, emotional ones. Your world shrinks. And the life you once knew outside these walls, it starts to feel like a story you heard once about someone else. And eventually you stop trying to get back to it. So before you check in, before you pack your bag and tell yourself it's just for a little while, ask the tough questions. Are you ready to return home weaker, not stronger? Are you okay with the possibility that temporary might quietly turn into permanent? Because here's the truth no one really says out loud. Checking in is easy. It's leaving. That's the hard part. So what now? What I'd do differently if I had the chance. Looking back, I don't blame myself for moving in. I made the best choice I could with what I knew. My family did the same. We were trying to be thoughtful. We wanted to prepare. We were hoping to avoid some kind of emergency down the road. But if I could go back, if I had a chance to turn back time, I would have done it differently. I would have fought harder to stay in my home, not out of pride, but out of self-preservation. There's a belief out there, a quiet, sneaky little myth, that once you hit a certain age, independence becomes optional. That comfort should matter more than control. That it's somehow noble to step aside, accept help, and stop being stubborn. And yes, sometimes help is truly needed. Sometimes your body or your mind just can't keep up like it used to. But sometimes we give up too soon. We don't explore every option. We don't ask enough questions. We don't look for support that lets us stay free. We just grab the easiest solution on the table. If I could go back, here's what I would have done differently. 1, I would have explored in-home care. There are trained professionals, nurses, aides, companions, who can come to you. You can get help with bathing, meds, meals, laundry, even just conversation, without giving up your favorite recliner or your own coffee mug. 2, I would have asked my family for something more specific. Instead of saying, I think I need to move, I should have said, can we come up with a plan that helps me stay here longer? Maybe someone could visit weekly. Maybe we could have added safety bars in the bathroom. Maybe it didn't have to be all or nothing. 3, I would have pushed back on the fear. Everyone was so focused on what could go wrong if I stayed home. But we didn't spend enough time asking what could go wrong if I left. Like losing control, losing confidence, losing parts of myself I didn't know I was giving away. 4, I would have focused on quality of life, not just safety. Nursing homes are safe. Yes, there are call buttons, trained staff, routines. But safety without joy is like a padded room. It might protect you, but it doesn't feed you. I wish I'd valued my porch time, my late night snacks, my silly morning routines more than I valued 24-hour coverage. And finally, 5, I would have asked the most important question. What matters most to me right now? Is it comfort? Is it freedom? Is it connection? Is it peace of mind? That answer, your honest answer, should be the compass that guides this choice. Listen, some people do need full-time care, And if that's true for you or your loved one, there's no shame in choosing it. But what I regret isn't being here. What I regret is not knowing what I was giving up. I regret not asking more, not researching more, not realizing that this wasn't just a pause or a detour, but a turning point I couldn't easily come back from. So now what? Now I tell my story, because maybe someone out there, maybe you, are standing on the edge of this same choice. And maybe hearing this will give you just enough pause, just enough clarity to ask, is this truly the only way, or just the most convenient? Because if I had someone say this to me before I packed that first suitcase, I think I would have chosen differently. And maybe you still can. My life, my lessons, and what I hope you'll take with you. I don't regret growing older. It's been a gift. This time I've been given. I've watched the world shift. I've lived through seasons of change. I've had more sunrises than I once thought I'd see, more birthdays than I dared to expect. That's not something I take for granted. But I do regret believing a nursing home was my only path forward. I walked through these doors thinking I was choosing safety, comfort, support. And in many ways, I was. I was fed, I was bathed, I was cared for and checked on. My medications were managed. But no one told me how much of me I'd be leaving behind. No one said that each day here would quietly take a small piece of my rhythm, my freedom, my voice. If I could speak to my younger self, I'd say this. Don't assume that giving up control is the only way to feel secure. Don't mistake convenience for peace. Don't give up the life you built, the routines, the little messes, the familiar creaks of your own floorboards, without asking, what am I letting go of? And what am I really gaining in return? To anyone reading this now, standing where I once stood, trying to make the right choice, I won't pretend to have your answer, but I will ask you to pause, to look beyond assumptions, to explore every path, not just the simplest ones, but the ones that still honor who you are. Ask your family to walk beside you, not ahead of you. Ask yourself what brings you joy, not just what helps you function. Ask your heart what it still longs for before your body convinces you it's too late. And if you're the child, grandchild, or caregiver reading this, trying your best to do what's right, please hear this. It's not about removing all risk. It's about preserving the life your loved one still has left to live. Freedom doesn't vanish with age. Sometimes it just needs a little help to stay standing. Sometimes a grab bar in the bathroom and a Sunday visit mean more than 24/7 supervision ever could. I don't share these regrets to scare you. I share them to prepare you, to help you decide with open eyes and a full heart. Because once you move in, once the boxes are unpacked and your days are filled with someone else's routine, life doesn't simply pause. It becomes something else entirely. So hold on to what's yours for as long as you can. Your choices, your daily rituals, your independence. They are not little things. They are everything. And if there ever comes a time when you have to let them go, make sure it's because it's truly necessary, not just because it's easier. Thank you for reading. If even one sentence here gave you pause, helped you reflect, helped you feel, then maybe this journey of mine wasn't in vain. Maybe this story, my story, will help you write a better one of your own.